There's a little-known part of Hollywood that most people are not aware of, known as the Audience Test Preview. The recently released book, Audienceology, reveals this for the first time. Our podcast series, Don't Kill the Messenger, brings this book to life, taking a peek behind the curtain. And now, join author and entertainment research expert, Kevin Getz.
My guest today is a prolific producer, and her expansive career is reflected by this really diverse array of projects that she's produced, from the Borat franchise to award-recognized dramas like Trial of the Chicago 7 and Wander Darkly. But in reviewing her bio, her extensive work, and knowing her for as long as I've known her, what really struck me was just how much time she makes to sort of give back to others. She helps underrepresented groups, supports women, mentors young filmmakers, serves on boards and leadership committees. And in such a busy life as the successful producer that she is, I'm truly moved by all that she does beyond her work life. It's very much the precept that I subscribe to and try to live by in my own life. And so that really made me think of why I'm so nuts about Monica Levinson, who's joining me here today. Hi, Monica.
Hi. Thank you so much. That's so sweet.
Well, it really was and is very important to give back. And you really do that. What is it that prompts you and motivates you to want to be so giving to the new generation?
Well, first, it was how I was raised. My family was very active in organizations, and my mother chaired a million things and committees and events. She her jobs were in nonprofit sometimes. I mean, she also started the first Women's Bank of Maryland, so she was doing other things.
So you're from Washington, D.C.?
Washington, D.C., yes.
And tell us, so active, and by the way, a Jewish family.
A Jewish family.
I say that because
yes.
we share that as well. And
yes.
But you also, we're going to talk about a documentary that you also did, which seems like very important to you and speaks to your heart.
Right.
But when did you realize that you wanted to be a producer in television and movies?
Right. We spoke about this right before we started recording, but I did go to acting camp, took voice lessons, went to tap, jazz, ballet school, for acting school, which was all my mother's doing. My mother wanted us to be involved in the arts in some way. She was very involved at the Kennedy Center in D.C.
You had siblings?
2 sisters, one older, one younger. They hate the arts. Although my older sister did work for XM in the early days and started until the merger for XM Sirius. But so she was more in the music business. But yeah, it was just,
Was it a single mom?
No, my dad just wasn't into it. But my mom would
so mom was the driving
schlep
force.
us to an hour away to the school that was like a top-rated school. Anyway.
If I'm not mistaken, you started in broadcast journalism.
I did. So I decided I was editor of my yearbook. I wanted to get into something communications, and I didn't know what that meant. I just knew that I wanted to be behind the scenes. I realized that acting was not for me very early on, and went to Syracuse and got
Great communications and journalism school, correct?
Exactly. And it gave me a really broad scope education. So I came out of there thinking I wanted to be in maybe entertainment law even. And I thought producing, entertainment law, I'm not sure. Applied to law school, was about to go, and got this job at one of my internships, which was the Washington Bureau for Entertainment Tonight, and also Consumer Reports Television, and a whole bunch of other anything that came to D.C. that was entertainment-based would use this company to be their crew and book stories for them.
So it was a production company, really?
It was a production company.
Now, you and I believe, first met over 20 years ago on Zoolander. Mm-hmm. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Oh, my Lord.
Absolutely. It's crazy,
How is
right?
it possible?
I know. We shot that in 2000. And by the time I was meeting you, it was probably 2001.
And you were an associate producer on that, which is sort of an entry-level producing credit. How did you get that credit?
So I worked with Celia Costas. I did 8 movies with her, and she was a line producer in New York, is a line producer in New York, really smart, and she's like a non-writing EP on TV shows now.
And she plucked you out of the chorus.
She did. She says that she plucked me out of high school because she likes to lie about my age.
Or her age.
Yes, exactly. So we did Pelican Brief is where I met her with Alan Pakula, and it was wonderful, and I stayed on that movie. She brought me to New York on that movie. I met her in D.C. after my broadcast journalism days. I quit that job after an election period and an inauguration, and it was wonderful, but I knew I wanted to do something different. And
it was fun.
It was really fun. It was really fun. It was a great job. So anyway, but film was calling me, and I had gone on a behind-the-scenes shoot, and it was like, oh, I need to do this.
And you worked with Sidney Lumet.
Yes, Sidney Lumet.
I loved Sidney Lumet.
Yes, I know.
Oh, what a man.
I know. It was really a wonderful time to be in New York and working on New York productions.
Did you do something with Michael Mann, too?
I did. I did The Insider, the New York portion of The Insider. So
Wow.
I was already living out here.
Well, David Rosenblum is a guest. He edited that.
And
so did
I was
Billy
on it
Goldenberg,
for, yeah,
another
Billy
guest.
Goldenberg did. Yes. I
think they
remember
were a
that.
team, weren't they? And
I think so, yeah. I was on it for so short of a period. I only ended up doing the New York portion because I wasn't available for the first portion. And that was when I was just a production
What
person.
a way to cut your teeth. Pakula,
Yes.
Lumet, Mann, not bad.
And with Pakula, I was able to stay on through post. And that's where I got my love of being there for the whole process. And if I hadn't had that opportunity with Alan, I don't know that I would be doing what I'm doing. I probably would have stayed line producing or, grown up and just been a line producer. But I loved post so much from being able to see the whole process unfold.
And you're so good at all of those elements. You really are. And I've watched you. What's amazing is that truly was a graduate school.
Yes.
That was a period of getting your master's or doctorate in
100%.
full-on producing from start to finish.
Yes. And so with Ben, with Zoolander, Celia said to me, do you want to be the production manager? Or we have all these other things that we have to do that aren't budgeted. There are like the VH1 Fashion Awards. We need to shoot live there. We need to do the Male Model of the Year packages. We have all this other footage that we don't have budgeted or scheduled, and we need to just figure out.
I love that.
And I said, put me there. I don't want to be a production manager. I want to do that stuff.
But it speaks to then the part of the education of how to make a day.
Yes.
How to move that crew. Correct?
Exactly. The Teamsters in New York called me Madam Bowfinger because we didn't have money. I would come to set and I'd be like,
great.
I need nothing tomorrow. I need nothing. And they're like, are you sure? Nothing. And then I'd come and I'd be like, just that little stake bed. And then I want to put some of this grip equipment on and I'm just going to steal one grip from the crew. And they were like, Monica, just tell us what you need tomorrow and we'll just add extra people. I'm like, no, I need nothing. So I was able to put together those units, and Ben sent me out and said, just go get footage of Owen. And it was really my own scrappiness of being in broadcast news that made that all work, which then led me to Borat because I think Ben gave me a recommendation to Sasha. Danny Goldberg, I don't know if you remember Danny. Danny Goldberg, who worked with Todd Phillips, but he also worked with Ivan Reitman. And I knew Danny from Private Parts, from the Howard Stern movie. And so he had recommended me to Sasha for Borat. And I think Sasha and Todd called Ben also, and they were
Ben,
like, yeah.
as in Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller, yes.
But
she's scrappy, go. With Ben and Stuart Kornfeld, who was
May he rest in
absolutely
peace.
a mentor to me and just such a dear friend. But they said, you have to come to finish the movie. You have to stay on through post. I stayed on Zoolander through the marketing, through the home video release. I had to do it all. And I did the same thing on Dodgeball with them because they trusted me. And so that
What
was
did you do on Dodgeball? Because you don't have
So
a
I
credit
was the
on Dodgeball.
production supervisor.
Oh.
I was supposed to get the associate producer credit, but
For whatever
long
reason.
story, they didn't give out producer credits. So
That was a good movie. That was a fun movie.
it was
Rawson.
great. But I did the same
Rawson
thing.
Thurber, right?
Yes. And I stayed on until the very, very end through the home video release.
Which makes you such an interesting producer, what I call a real producer, a producer that really earns the PGA moniker. And that means something. It means something. It means you've put all that time in and you really show up. What I'm shocked and amazed is the diversity of the projects you've worked on. Even though you've specialized in some of the greatest comic minds, I know you've been quoted as saying, yeah, but the dramas, I mean, there's always comedy in drama. and you're always been drawn to comedy. But talk to us about your relationship with Sacha Baron Cohen, which really started, I guess, early on. When you saw Ali G, did you think, oh, his stuff could really be movie worthy?
That's an interesting question. I think when I saw it, I just thought he's a genius. I love this so much. And when Danny Goldberg called me and said, I have a project, I think you might be good for it. Are you familiar with Sacha Baron Cohen? And I just went, yes. Are you kidding? I love him. Oh my God, he's amazing. He's brilliant. And they said, after I signed my NDAs, we're doing a Borat movie. And I read the outline and I thought, it's going to be interesting to do this process. But I was just coming in. He thought I was coming in as like a production supervisor or whatever I was coming in as. And ultimately, Todd Phillips left the project, which meant Danny left the project, which meant the rest of the crew pretty much left the project. And I was there with Jay Roach. Yeah, the last woman standing.
Oh, and Jay was on it?
Jay was on it, but Jay was off directing as well. So they said, Debbie Liebling at Fox said to me, you may not leave. I said, well, should I just take a hiatus? And she said, you may not leave. This movie will not happen. You may not leave.
She is a dear friend.
Yes.
And she's so great with comedy.
Yes, she's amazing.
She's so
She
good.
started at Comedy Central. I mean, she's,
I know.
Yeah, she's so
she's
smart.
so smart.
Yeah. I have a project with her now,
Oh,
too.
good.
Yeah,
so do
great.
I. I'm working on something with her right now. So talk to us about the beginning of Sacha Baron Cohen. How do you get into a mind like his? I mean, do you just let him go? Do you rein him in? Do you guide him? How do you guide him? Because he is such a force. And I also was so taken with when I first met him, and he was lovely. He wrote a beautiful quote for the back of my book, Audienceology.
He loves you. And we're both so grateful. We're all grateful for all that you did for those movies because you really helped us. You helped us figure out how to market it and how to put it out there. And we relied on, and, I think your way of doing the screenings and doing your focus groups, I think Jay Roach is like your protege. I don't know if you know this, but when we would do these little family, friends and family screenings,
told me he channels me.
Jay totally channels you. He's so good at it.
Thank you.
He's a little Kevin Getz. So yeah.
Well, it's so funny because that first screening in Marina Del Rey, I remember that so vividly. And do you remember the wave? People got up in waves, like the wave at a ball game.
Yes. It was
in
incredible.
the audience when he did the
naked
tea
fight.
bag, the tea bag.
Yes.
Let's just say what it is.
Yes.
Was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen on film. And it was just raucous.
I've never seen an audience react in such a way. There was one guy, I don't know if you remember this, he got up on the aisle and just ran up and down the aisle.
I do.
Screaming.
I do, with his arms up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was insane. I know. And we all just were.
I know. I'm trying to tell the listeners, I'm trying to express to the listeners, we sound hyperbolic, but we cannot say enough. It was insanity. It
was insanity. We all had to go out after that screening and just sit and reflect for a minute. The scores. And it was our first screening. And
I thought it was so genius the way Fox distributed it because they were criticized for not going wide enough, if you remember.
Well, yeah.
And
it was a big internal struggle, too, because we thought that it was saying, and I think it was a little bit, that they were worried about the strength of the film and being able to work in the world.
Well, those of us who worked on it, I thought it was genius because I said they have a lot of faith in this movie, but nobody really knows this Borat character in the entire country. Therefore, let it sell out, let it get word of mouth, and it'll explode the next weekend. And it's exactly what happened.
Yes.
It's exactly what happened.
I got that call Saturday night from Sacha saying,
sold out.
You're not going to believe this, but we're number one. And I said, with 800 screens, we're number one. And in that environment back then,
it was like doing an advanced screening.
Yeah. If you didn't have 2,800 screens, you were a limited release. So back in 2006.
But in retrospect now, do you understand my
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Right. In the perception with the press and everything is that you are somehow less than, or the studio's not confident, but I knew a different conversation going on. So I actually couldn't corroborate that. That's really what they were doing.
It was brilliant. It worked.
Yeah,
it worked.
It worked.
But I will go back to your original question is what's it like working with Sasha? And I never want to say I came in there and had to figure out how to make those things happen that he was writing on paper. And I never wanted to say no. I wanted the creative process to flow and still feel that way about a creative process. The writer's room needs to create. They need to keep coming up with the ideas. He needs to be able to have that umbrella and figure out how to either make it work or not. And sometimes we had to shoot things that were maybe not going to work, but we needed to be able to have that option and the ability to try.
Is it true that Sasha told me that in the latest Borat movie, what is it called?
Subsequent movie film.
Subsequent movie film.
Yes.
I don't know what accent that was, but
you were doing Bruno's accent.
I remember that particular scene at the festival, and watching that film, I was fearing for Sasha. Truly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You were there.
I wasn't. I actually stayed back. What I learned, I don't know if you remember this, but on the first Borat, I got arrested. So I was there when they said, who's
right on.
in charge?
Hold on, high five.
I know.
All right.
I was like, ooh, this is my only chance of ever having
your mother must have been so proud of her daughter.
So, honestly, it was kind of like a big badge of honor.
But tell me about that.
Good street cred.
Before you go on to the other, tell me about the arrest.
So the arrest was that it was the scene where it's actually not in the movie, but the scene that precedes it is when he is checking into the hotel and he makes a deal. Yes, in the first movie, he makes a deal in New York for, he spits in his hand and says, can we do it for less? And he tries to bargain him. So that scene, we then had a checkout scene that we were going to do next. We learned a lot because we learned you can't do that with the same person. It's never going to work because as soon as you let them walk away, they're going to go, wait a second.
And they sign releases?
Yeah, of course. Everybody
sign releases after the first time?
They sign releases before we go on camera.
Oh.
So anyway, the guy walked away, probably talked to a couple people and realized that maybe something's
being played
weird. Here. Yeah. I think they asked if he was Father Guido Sarducci. And that was hilarious because that was a character from SNL from like 20 years prior.
The greatest.
Yeah. So we were like, no, it's not him. But anyway, so there was the idea was that he checks out of a hotel and with the price of a room in New York, in Kazakhstan, that would buy you all the possessions within that room. So we shoved everything into the elevator. The idea was the elevator doors would open, the manager would be there, and he'd be taking it, and he would get out the line. And he would say, what are you doing? Yes.
I'm losing my shit here.
It didn't work. So unfortunately, he just said, we're calling the police.
Oh.
Because he had walked away, and he just said, I don't think this is real. And he was able to talk to other people, and they were like, something's up. So when the elevator doors open, the whole thing is jammed with a bed and a desk and a thing, and he's trying to pull it out. He just said, I'm calling the police. And we talked to our lawyers right before we walked into the hotel, and we said, okay, so we're about to do this. Anything we need to know? And they said, just don't have Sasha walk outside of the premises with any possessions. So he didn't. And he kept trying to get them to, the way he does as the character. And finally, it's like the police are coming. So we just sent him away, sent the crew out, and there was a couple things. I stayed because there were a couple pieces that we had brought from another hotel because we didn't have an art department. We were selling the set dressing from another hotel room to say that it was the interior.
You were there to collect your pieces.
I was collecting, and they finally said, okay. I said, this isn't yours. I'm going to take it with me. The police were outside with me and Dale Stern, who was our first AD. And the two of us stood there, and they said, whose stuff is this? And I said, I brought it. He said, whose stuff is it? I said, I brought it. It's rented. Whose stuff is this? And I said, it's from the Embassy Suites, Secaucus, New Jersey. And he said, cuff her, cuff him, we're going in. And we were both in jail for about 19 hours.
What was it like?
The first 13, I was giddy, like going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here. This is ridiculous. Oh my God. And then the last 6, I was like, get me the F out of here. Wow. I cannot handle this.
And Sasha called you as soon as he was like, oh my God.
There's footage. There's very funny behind the scenes footage of Sasha sitting at my makeshift desk at the hotel and him saying, okay, who knows how to get Monica out of jail? And he was like, Monica knows how to get Monica out of jail. And it's very true because
really funny.
Yeah.
So that is really funny. Of course it is.
Yes.
Who would solve this for us? It would be
I
Monica.
basically started, I said, can I call this person? I was on the phone with one of our lawyers when they arrested us. So he sent a lawyer down who happened to be, by coincidence alone, Jay Roach's lawyer's brother. And it was crazy. So anyway, Alan Abramson came and I just would give him things. I would say, okay, make sure this release gets sent in. Get this in to the police so they can see that, this shouldn't happen.
What happened then on the second film, subsequent movie?
So with that, I just learned, and from that moment forward on that show and on subsequent shows, including
You
Bruno,
could do more help.
That I was better off away. Yes, because they couldn't say who's in charge and pointed me. And also, I'm not
But they would have turned
a renegade.
They would have turned that ambulance over. It was in an ambulance. Right?
Yes.
They would have turned that over and gotten. I mean, you saw the Sasha's face.
Yeah.
And I saw some footage, I guess, that wasn't in the final cut. It was really.
I think we put it on deleted scenes. It's on Amazon now.
Yeah,
that deleted
when you
sequence.
finally went back and did the deleted scenes, which I also worked on.
Yes,
we tested that as well.
Exactly.
Which is great. What I love about Sasha and you and the whole group that you all work with is that you listen. You listen to the audience, which is the whole genesis of this podcast, which was about having the audience's point of view sort of brought into the conversation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, Sasha did about 20 screenings on each of his films.
And all the great comedy directors do it. They just do. And they listen. They listen. And it's more valuable than the numbers. It's more valuable than what they're saying. They just listen and then say, okay, rhythmically I need to do this. The cadence is off here, et cetera, et cetera. I find that fascinating.
Well, Sasha always wants the social commentary, obviously, but his North Star is the comedy.
You bet. And at the end of the day, it's a movie, and they're there to entertain. You strike me, Monica, so much as having this great core of compassion and empathy. I love seeing your face whenever I see you. You always put a smile on my face. And we always have that mutual sort of feeling with each
100%.
other. There's a safety, a certain sense of transparency and trust. And trust. You're working with Bill Burr on his latest Old Dads, which you can talk about it. I can't because we're in the middle of production. You're testing it. But I can just say that it is a terrific film. But the way in which you deal with your talent, your directors, has a universal quality of caring. Watching you with David Oyelowo, for example, watching you with Sasha, watching you with Bill, and so many others has just been a treat. And honestly, you gave me kudos and I'm throwing them back at you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Does that come from Mom too?
Mom and Dad. I mean, I think
I know now we got to bring Dad into it.
Yes. I mean, boy. No, I think that it's also being raised by Celia Costas in this business and having that respect, and Stuart Kornfeld. And it's just, I don't know.
It's wonderful to have mentors, isn't it?
Yes, it's great.
You've just answered your own question then about why you give back, because you've been given.
Yes.
And so it's important to give back to the next generation, right?
Absolutely. And, I'm on this, there's this one initiative, and I'm far beyond it helping me, about production supervisors, which has been predominantly a female-oriented role in the industry, and there's no pathway for those people to get into the DGA, to the Directors Guild. Anyway, it's a long story, and it's a production-oriented issue. And people keep saying, why are you working on it? And I said, because the people that come behind me need to have a pathway. Why should it be as difficult as it was for me
Same in post-production
to move up?
supervisors. In fact, I have Nancy Kirchhofer as a guest coming on in a few weeks. Because
we work together.
She's so fantastic. And others like Lisa Dennis and Lisa Rogers. There's so many great post-production women, post-production supervisors who are women. And I always...
There's no pathway.
And also, though, a lot of people don't know the effect that they have on the success of the movie and bringing it home.
Yes. Post is so
much
where the movie is shaped. That's why way back when with Alan Pakula and with Ben Stiller, that's why when I was in post, I realized, okay, I need to be a part of the whole process because it's not fun for me unless I'm part of that whole process because post is so important.
I want to go back to the comment I made about your compassion, your empathy, and sort of talk about your documentary that you co-directed.
Yes.
About your Jewish roots and your upbringing. Can you speak about that? Why was that important for you to do? And I'm just going to say it has to be related to what we're talking about.
Yes. I mean, listen, I'm very fortunate. I have a great family. I love them so much. And they have done everything for us, and they work so hard. My mom and my aunt and my uncle when he was alive, but they worked so hard and my father and my uncles, but this one family kept us all together. And it's so important that the family all be a unit. And the cousins, this means the cousins, the sisters, everybody. And so I filmed a Thanksgiving dinner 14 years ago and just went around the table because my mother said, shouldn't we do that little book where we can fill out the family history? And I said, I'm just bringing a camera home. So I was working on maybe Bruno, and I brought home a camera from the office. And I said, okay, everybody just tell your story. And it just went around the table, and much like Jewish families do, we all cross-talked, and I just sat there and tried to follow the conversation. And then my uncle, about 10 years later, said, where is that footage you shot? Are we ever going to see it? And I went to work with my co-director to just put something together for the family.
How is it your co-director, by the way?
He's a dear friend of mine, and he is a great editor. So the two of us started working on this family documentary, which I showed to my family in 2017. And then during the pandemic, I was feeling
What did they say when they first saw it?
Oh, my God. They were blown away. They were blown away. And it's truly just a love letter to my family. And so
and so many families, correct? I mean, that's the universality of it. It's like we're all so the same.
We're all the same.
Of course, Shirley MacLaine always says, just when you think you've healed your life, you go home for Thanksgiving.
Right.
I love that quote.
Yes, it's amazing.
I don't know if she came up with it, but I got to tell you, I've used it so many times. And, nothing like a family to open those wounds.
Right, exactly. We're a little unique in that way, but we're also... I think during the pandemic, it started to dawn on me the anti-Semitism that was starting to brew. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just put something out about my family and that we're a Jewish family. And look, we're all pretty much the same. We all tell stories around a Thanksgiving table. We're all connected in some way.
Were you religious growing up?
Not religious. Culturally, it was very important for us.
Sure.
Being Jewish was very important.
Did you go to shul? Did you go to temple?
Oh, yeah. We went to high holidays.
Mm-hmm.
We were all bat mitzvahed. That was all important.
Mm-hmm.
My father and mother really wanted to make sure that we had that cultural experience in our household. But, if you watch the documentary, my father tells, I said, what's a family tradition? And he said, sneaking out of shul and going to lunch on Yom Kippur. And we just all kind of were sitting silently. And I said, Dad, I think that's a secret.
Well, God knows.
Yes.
God
Yom Kippur,
knows.
you fast. For those not Jewish, you're supposed to fast that day.
Oh, that's so funny.
But we started it because my grandmother needed to take medication and she needed to take food with her medication. So we all didn't want to disappoint my grandmother and not go to lunch with her.
Disappoint her and have a pastrami sandwich in the process.
We don't cook we wouldn't go to a place where there would be other Jews discovering us.
So the Chinese restaurant.
Yes.
Oh, no. Sorry. That would be other Jews.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, during the pandemic, I talked to Stephen Henches, my co-director, and I said, what do you think about trying to turn this into something that might be more for the general public than my family? And so we worked on it. And
did you bring them back for additional footage?
I did. I shot more in 2017, and then I shot more in 2021, and we edited it, and I premiered it at the Annapolis Film Festival in April.
Because of home. Right?
Yes, because of DC. It was very well received, and my family had a great time. And it was amazing for them to see our family on a massive screen. And now it's being released February 1st on Apple, Amazon, and Google Play, and then March 1st on Tubi. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
That's what, as a producer, nobody bought it. That's as a producer,
please,
that's how we distribute.
Absolutely.
We figure it out. So,
you figure it out.
And I wanted them to be able to say, our documentary is out there. And honestly, Stuart Kornfeld was a dear friend, and he left me some money in his will. And I used that money to finance this.
That's a great
And it
thing
was
to
just
share
because
with
I
us.
think with Stuart, he would have been so proud of me for putting myself out there as a co-director and doing this. He was not somebody, if you knew Stuart, he would be like, oh, it's a little earnest for me. But because he was a little more cynical. Yes.
Yeah.
But he would have been proud that I did something.
I did, I think, every movie that he ever
Yes,
did.
of course.
I think I really worked on everyone. He was terrific.
Terrific.
Ben Stiller and I talked about him very fondly and about, I guess, a year ago. It's nice to keep the memories alive,
100%.
Going back to, if I could, the diversity of your slate, if you will, of your IO. The last 2 years, I think you've done something like how many movies and how many TV shows?
Oh, there was a year that I did nine productions came out in 1 year.
It's just, I don't
and
think
now I'm a little quieter.
No, but I don't think, it all goes in cycles, but I don't think I've ever heard that. Like, was that when Trial of the Chicago 7 came out?
It was Borat. I did a Women in Film special that we sold to the CW. I called up a friend at the CW and I said, would you want this? Because we couldn't do our gala. And so Amy Baer, who was the board president, called me.
Oh, Amy Baer is coming in as a guest.
Oh, I love Amy Baer. She's one of my dear friends.
She's one of my dear friends.
We did Brian Banks together, which was one of those movies that you're talking about that veered away from comedy. But
what a story that was.
Yes.
For those of you who haven't seen it, it's a beautiful story of a guy
Hodge,
who
stars in it.
And Greg Kinnear. Yep.
And Sherry Shepherd's in it, and
But it's a great story because it's about a guy who was wrongly accused and imprisoned right out of high school, giving up his shot at the NFL. And of course, he was in prison and come to discover he was innocent and was released, and the NFL gave him a shot to play in the NFL. So what a story. I mean, gosh.
It's a great story. And he wanted to prove his innocence. He knew that he would never be free until he was able to. He worked with the California Innocence Project to get himself a new trial and to be able to go out there and be exonerated.
So speaking of that, you and I have been through so many previews together. What significant moments do you remember that the audience's response really informed a big change in the movie or TV show?
I mean, so many. You definitely feel a lull in the audience. You feel when things are going too long. You feel when an ending's not working.
Was there a reshoot that particularly worked well because the audience said it's not landing? You went back and suddenly it popped, something like that?
Well, I'll just use the Bill Burr movie, for example, because we did screen it and there was a lull where people weren't laughing because there's a serious moment. And
which you need.
We need it for the emotional
But you don't want to stay down there too
arc.
long.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we needed a laugh. And so we went and we reshot something, and it just kind of infuses a big laugh in a place where we really needed it.
And drives the engine then.
Yes.
And so you don't dip. You just sort of keep the cadence. You go as long as you can. So genius that you did that.
Yeah. I think it worked. With comedy, it's easier to tell. With drama, there's so many different instances of where
I remember
decided.
Even in the
tell me what you remember.
Well, David's movie.
Oh, yes, of course.
I mean, just the reveal. I don't want to give it to spoiler, so I don't want to give it away. But the reveal of the quote-unquote monster was up for a great discussion. Right?
Yes. And we really just listened to the audience.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful film.
It's beautiful. And David is a wonderful filmmaker. And he also is just so thoughtful, and he allowed the audience, he was able to take it in and digest it and come back and say, okay, let's try this.
He's best friends, of course, with Nate Parker, who happens to be very close with me. And so we shared that, and they have a really exciting business that's going to be announced pretty soon, I think,
great.
Right? With starting their own sort of streaming service. is
Oh,
my,
I didn't know that.
yeah,
That's amazing.
my,
David is very enterprising and incredibly smart.
and so lovely.
So lovely.
Really,
so
really
lovely.
great.
And he was another one who, there was another piece of that movie that wasn't quite working. And he called and he said, I think let's do this reorder. And it was something that I had suggested and he was resistant to. And he came back and he digested and thought about it. And he said, I think that's going to be the better way to end the movie.
That's why you're so good, because as you said before with Sasha, you don't say no, you guide. The great acting teachers, the great directors don't give line readings. They don't tell the actor what to do. They guide them to get there themselves, which is essentially what you did. Even though you put the notion forward, you knew that he needed to arrive there himself.
He absolutely needed to get there. And we were producing partners. He was a producer on it as well. And so we're all working together. As you know, film is so collaborative. And if you don't look at film in that way, or television, if you don't look at it as a collaborative process, forget it.
What was it like working with Betty Thomas?
Oh, I love Betty Thomas.
I love Betty Thomas.
I love her. I got to do 2 movies with her, yes. And she was somebody who, speaking of collaborative, she would look, when we did Private Parts, the Howard Stern movie, which was amazing because I thought
it was sort of genius.
It's such a sweet movie and Howard's so amazing. I was the biggest fan, and I'll tell you the quick story. Celia, who
the line producer from New York.
The line producer, she said to me, I just went to LA. I'm going to meet with the people doing Titanic, and I'm meeting with this Howard Stern movie, but I don't like Howard Stern, so we're not going to do that. I was like, oh, no. Howard Stern's amazing, and you have to read his book. She's like, I don't know, Monica. And she got off the plane. She called me. She goes, okay. I laughed the whole way. I was embarrassed. I had to cover up the book title that said Private Parts. And I said, okay. So she came back, and she said, okay, I had 2 good meetings, one with Ivan Reitman and Danny Goldberg and Betty, and one with the Titanic team. And I said, please, let's do, Howard, please, please, please. And she said, okay, let's do it. And meanwhile, she'd be a very, very wealthy woman if she had just done Titanic. But we both had one of our best experiences in our career working on that movie.
Were you at that screening in Seattle when the film broke?
In Seattle?
We went up to Seattle or Portland.
No, I was not, because I was in New York. I went to the Madison Square Garden premiere.
But the film broke. And it was really quite a harrowing. It was in the middle of a really good scene, too. But the movie didn't come back up for 15 or 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And I had to go and keep them warm,
Oh,
and then I might have shared this already on the podcast, but it's worth repeating because it was one of my worst moments. And I learned everything from that moment of how to deal with an audience and what not to say. And I had them in the palm of my hand. Sherry Lansing was back there with Betty, and it was really, I kept going back and saying, they're great. Go back down. Tell them it's going to be 5 more minutes. Go back, go back down. Tell them it'll be another 5. So finally, when I went back, I said, you guys have been just absolutely amazing. I don't know about that projectionist. He must be from Seattle.
Oh, no.
Boo.
Oh, no.
Boo. Boo. I get up there and Betty said to me, you
Dude,
you idiot. Never insult the audience, the people. I did it again. On another movie, and I remember saying, I was out of town, so I remember saying, "Gosh, that projectionist must be from Hollywood," and the audience went berserk and laughed, and I said,
Perfect.
"Thank you, Betty Thomas."
Yes. So back to Betty being collaborative, we'd be filming, and if somebody wasn't laughing from the crew, if the grip wasn't laughing, she'd point to the day player grip and say, "Why don't you think that's funny? What's not working for you? Why aren't you laughing?" And she would listen. She would listen while we were filming to see what that was making the crew not respond the way that we hoped the crew would. She always has been super collaborative. But speaking of breaking the film, where you probably weren't there, but when we premiered Borat at Toronto.
I wasn't at the premiere.
We premiered and we did the whole thing. We brought, it was our
no.
premiere of the movie.
Don't tell me.
We bring everybody, we bring Sasha in with the women dressed as, the Roma community, the Gypsy community, walking him in on a plow and whatever, and him coming in and doing his big arrival. And we screen, and about 20 minutes in, the film breaks, the projector breaks. And Michael Moore was at the screening.
Yeah, yeah.
And he went upstairs, Jim Giannopoulos and me, not that I could do anything. And we're all just
what was
talking
Jim
to
gonna do?
Yeah.
Jim could only just be like,
we all
hey,
just were like,
you want a job tomorrow? Yeah.
Sasha's like, go help. And so
Did Sasha
he was
go down front?
Yes, he was still in his Borat outfit. So he and Larry went down and entertained for about 20 minutes, half an hour.
That was worth a
and
break.
We could never fix the projector. They were like, we need this part from this other theater.
It never...
No, we finished it. We did it again the next night.
And did everyone come back? I wonder.
And we had a bigger theater the next night.
Wow.
But it was insane.
That's an insane story.
I remember saying to the projectionist, I said, where's this part? And he said, it's probably at this other theater. And I said, I just made this movie. I have people here. We can go into that theater and get that. He's like, it's locked. I was like, we will figure it out. We will do it,
We'll break the goddamn door down.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
We will do it. He goes, no, I'm going to have to do it. So he wouldn't tell me where it was because we were like, we're going.
Right. Oh.
But anyway, so we ended up just...
Let me bring this, as we wind down now, let me bring this full circle back to the fact that you are so involved with women in film and other organizations that help young people and women in particular. What advice are you going to give young women that are in positions like production supervisors that want to go up that next level, that next rank, or getting more women editors or getting more women DPs? And what can we do to increase those particularly more male-centric jobs? Right.
Well, I'll say that Mike Miller at the IA is very interested in diversifying the unions. So I've been part of the low budget agreement, the independent contracts at the IA in the past, and he really wants to have more diversity. So I think the unions are...
What does that mean? Lessening the restrictions?
Allowing people to come into the ranks if they have the support of somebody in that department to move in and get into the union. So he's been great. And there's a clause in the low budget agreement where you can do just that, where a union can allow at least one person per film to join. So that's great. And I'd say my advice is just, find yourself a mentor. Look for people that are doing what you want to be doing, and trying to find the people that are doing what you want to be doing in the industry, and then start talking to them and start trying to figure out how you're going to maneuver your way. Because the one other thing is to have a little patience, and with time, it will happen. Because I used to be in such a rush as a kid.
Well, you know what I say now to my friends who have kids in their 20s and they're so stressed? I say, guys, it's a different world. I said, there are no mistakes in your 20s. That you can't make any mistakes.
Right.
In other words, any job you do is going to inform you and help you grow and learn as a human being.
100%.
And then when you get to your early 30s, then you sort of put your stake, you claim your ground, you lay your stake in the ground, and you say, I think this is the area I really want to be in.
100%. But I will say even more so.
You did it.
Yes, even more so. My father, he was about my age now, and I was in my early 20s, and I was leaving my broadcast journalism job, and I thought, okay, what am I going to do with my career? And I always felt like I had to be doing something. Like if I wasn't in law school, I had to be having that job. I needed to know exactly what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And I said, gosh, Dad, I don't know what I'm going to do. And he looked at me and he said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do for the rest of my life in my career. And I said, what are you talking about? You've had a lamp store. You've always had a lamp store. You're a lamp store owner. He's like, yeah, well, the business is not doing so well right now. I need to reinvent the business, or maybe go work somewhere else for a minute and make some money and figure things out. And I'm applying to law school in my 50s. And he was just trying new things and trying to figure out. And he said, keep a couple dollars in your pocket because you're going to have to support yourself. But take chances, because whatever you do, whatever business you go into is never going to stay the same. It's always going to change. And if you're not willing to change with it and be willing to pivot, then you're not going to be able to get ahead. So know that nothing is forever, and take your chances.
Well, you just took a chance because you joined in late September Color Force.
Yes.
Nina Jacobson and Brad Simpson's company. And
I came in as an in-house producer, which is great.
Which is fantastic.
Because I'm getting to do television. I'm getting to go into more
and
television.
And they've had a great track record.
They
so
do.
that all of you together, I can only imagine the damage you're going to do.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to do it because I really wanted to. I've been developing my own TV, but it's just harder. And it's harder to get those off the ground and to be working with such pros. And to be able to be brought into that company as an in-house producer, I'm really excited.
Well, I would
work
with you any day of the week, any day,
Thanks,
any day of the year. I adore you and love you, Monica.
Feel the same way, Kevin. I'm so grateful that you had me here, but I am more grateful that you're my friend. And whenever I see your face when we're screening, I'm just, okay, everything's going to be okay.
Aww.
Kevin's here.
Monica Levinson, thank you.
Thank you.
To our listeners, I hope you enjoyed our interview today. Follow Monica on Instagram at monlev, that's MONLEV, and check out her upcoming project, Bill Burr's Old Dads, and her current documentary, The Stories of Us. For other stories like this one, please check out my book, Audienceology, at Amazon or through my website at kevingets360.com. And you can also follow me on my social media at KevinGets360. Next time on Don't Kill the Messenger, I'll welcome the Academy Award-nominated film editor David Rosenblum, who worked on films including The Insider, All Good Things, The Black Mass, and The Way Back. Until next time, I'm Kevin Getz, and to you, our listeners, I appreciate you being part of the movie-making process. Your opinions matter.
Get a glimpse into a secret part of Hollywood that few are aware of and that filmmakers rarely talk about. In the new book, Audienceology by Kevin Getz. Each chapter is filled with never-before-revealed inside stories and interviews from famous studio chiefs, directors, producers, and movie stars, bringing the art and science of audienceology into focus. Audienceology, how moviegoers shape the films we love. From Tiller Press at Simon & Schuster. Available now.